What does it look like to be a worship leader in the church today? And what does it look like to be a professional worship leader out on the road in this world? Today, I get to interview my friend and fellow ministry partner, Chris Barnes from Chris Barnes Music, and get his insights on what it's like to be a worship leader, a singer songwriter. We'll share about a event that we both did together recently, the impact that we've seen. And you get a peek behind the curtain on what it looks like to be a worship leader in our modern world in this modern context. My name is Tucker Rodkey, and this is the Artist Commission podcast. Hey guys, welcome Chris Barnes to the podcast. Excited to have him here and hear a little bit about his story, his worship ministry, and all the stuff that we've gotten to do together. So a little bit of background for me and with the Arts Commission and with Chris. So we've been doing ministry together for years now.
Yeah.
I don't even want to guess how long. It's probably been like 7 years or so, something like that.
Yeah, it's best if we don't put a number to it, but
Yeah, it's been a few years, and we've gotten to go through different transitions as separate ministries, but we've gotten to do a lot of just very impactful ministry together, see a lot of lives change, see a lot of people come to Christ. And so I'm excited for Chris to be our first official guest on the podcast and hear a little bit about from him. So welcome, Chris. Glad to have you.
hey, thanks. Thrilled to be here. Always love doing anything with you, Tucker. You're such a just warm, welcoming, exciting person to be around, and now we get to do this digitally.
Chris, I would love to hear, just so people have some background on you and who you are. Tell us a little bit about yourself and your life currently, but then also I want to hear about your history with how you got into music in general and then into worship ministry.
Yeah, cool, man. So I'm 35 years old. Been married now for 11 years. My beautiful wife, Katie, and we actually do ministry
11 years.
together.
Good for you.
Dude, yeah, bro. How did that happen? Like somebody owes me some money, right?
Yeah.
Like somebody was taking bets that this wasn't
Good
going to
work
last.
by you.
Well, dude, no, I married way up, right? But yeah, so 11 years. The best part as far as ministry and music is that we get to do this together. So she runs front of house audio
Mhm.
when we go on the road, and that's a unique dynamic that we've found a way to make work most times. She may pop
Yeah, I
into
get to
this
see you guys
podcast.
yell at each other from the front of the stage to the back of the stage.
Yeah. There's like most couples fight over like the color of the curtains or like which way the toilet paper roll
Mhm.
goes. We fight over how much reverb to put on drums. And so it's a whole thing. But no, I love my wife dearly. That's not cliche. Like I really truly love my wife. I love doing ministry with her. But back to the original question. I've been doing music.
Yeah.
Actually, it's funny you bring this up, man. So Christmas was just what 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago now, and I texted my parents on Christmas Day that I forget the number, but when I was 12 years old, they bought me a drum set. One of the few gifts they ever got me. We didn't do gifts as a family, but they bought me a drum set for a Christmas gift. And I was 12 years old. And so it's
Mm.
been, I'm 30, 35 now. So it's been 23 years. And so I think I shot him a text and said, hey, 23 years ago, you bought me a drum set. And that gift radically changed my life. Thank you for that. Right.
Oh,
And it's true. So I never stuck with anything as a kid. Like I played sports for a season, right? I got involved with Boy Scouts for a season, right? And when I showed an interest in drums, they were real apprehensive to do it because like, hey, he's not going to stick with it. But I did. And so
yeah.
I started playing drums at 12 years old. And like, I mean, when I say I was dedicated, I would come home from school and play, to my parents' chagrin, play six,
Oh,
that's an
man.
exaggeration, but like from time I came home from school to the time I went to bed, I would just be playing drums, playing drums, playing drums. I loved every part of it.
Wow.
And so it's truly in my own mind, right? In my own heart, like I'm still a drummer. That's what I gravitate most towards. But I was also just not incredibly sociable and didn't have a lot of friends. And so when I wanted to play music, like I didn't have anybody to play music with, right? And Tucker's laughing because he knows I'm weird. So let me just speed up the story.
Peculiar.
Like I started playing drums, but I wanted to get better at drums and I didn't have anybody to play with. And so I taught myself just a couple chords on guitar so that I could record little songs on guitar, right? And play
Mhm.
drums to them. And that was the whole genesis of this. And so what happened through this process is that I started playing guitar and eventually got involved with a youth group. And the youth pastor of that said, hey, We don't have a need for a drummer, but we do have a need for somebody to, like, lead worship and do these songs, and so, at, like, 14, 15 years old, I'm standing in this youth group in this little trailer packed to the gills,
Mm,
right? Like, fire code violations, just singing songs like "Here I Am to Worship" and "Heart of Worship" and "Blessed Be Your
mhm.
Name" and all that type of stuff, and so that was kind of
All
the
the
genes
goodies.
What's that? Yeah, dude. Oh, man, can we bring some of those back? Like, what great
Yeah,
songs. Oh my
seriously.
gosh. Yeah. Yeah, yeah, yeah. And so, like, that was the genesis of the whole thing where I so badly wanted to be a drummer that got forced into a role as at that time, just kind of a guitar player who could maybe start a song.
Yeah.
I'm terrible I'm still not a great vocalist, but, like, back then, just, "Here I am to
Mhm.
worship," just, like, shaky and insecure and all that type of stuff, but, like,
You're just
in
getting
those
through
env
it.
yeah, just getting but in those environments, all you had to do was start, right? Like, the group
Yeah.
everybody else was gonna join in, that's the beauty. I mean, that's a deeper conversation, but that's the beauty of corporate worship is I don't have to be
Mhm.
the top vocalist in the room. In fact, I don't even wanna be the top vocalist in the
Yeah.
room. I just wanna have to be able to start the song and let people enter in and engage in that moment, and so that was the genesis of I keep saying that word, but that was the beginning of it, and then it just turned into from there, I did some road time as a touring drummer, but then just kinda got forced back not forced, but, like, the Lord brought me back into to worship arts, and I've spent
Yeah.
the last, oh gosh, many, many years working in churches and touring as a worship leader. So that was kind of the beginning of it there.
Yeah, man. Have you ever thought about trying to be the Phil Collins of worship music with drumming and just being back there with your Britney Spears mic and just going at it?
Well, I do have a Britney Spears mic, but I've not done the Phil Collins part of it yet. Yeah, dude, he was a unique
I think
animal
you
in his
should try.
ability.
I think you should
Yeah,
try and
well,
lead worship from the drum kit.
we're gonna be on tour together next week, and so maybe we'll just do that together.
Mhm. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's my request.
Go stop your
That's what
crying,
I'd
it'll
like from you.
be alright.
Alright, so this is a weird fact about me, alright, that has nothing to do with what we're talking about. When I was a kid, I had this SanDisk MP3 player that could
Yes.
hold, like, 50 songs, and I would grab that in my earbuds, and at night, I would fall asleep listening to Phil Collins' greatest hits and Fleetwood Mac greatest hits.
Oh my
Those were
gosh.
my 2 albums I was able to fit on this little MP3 player, and I'll tell you what, Phil Collins got me right in the feels as, like, a 10-year-old boy, which is really
Yes.
strange, but I was just laying there, I was like, "Oh, yeah, I feel this. I feel this in my soul. This is good stuff." So
Yeah,
that's
dude.
my, weird Phil Collins fun fact of the day for you.
There's an X factor to Phil Collins that, like, is deeply, deeply underrated. I don't know what it is because he's not like whatever, we're not going this way. Yeah.
He looks like a car salesman,
Yeah,
and then
exactly.
just has the most amazing voice you've ever heard,
Yep.
but,
Yep.
that's neither here nor there. So, for you, like, you were in, heavy metal music, doing drumming, right? And then that's very different than, worship music. As you've kind of taken on this not full-time, but this part-time gig of doing music and worship music, what really, like, inspires you in this work that you're doing with worship and leading people in worship? What's,
Yeah.
like, the motivating, moving factor? Obviously, there's the Lord, but there's always just, like there's something unique for everybody that's like, "This is what is driving me towards this."
Yeah. Yeah, no, this is good, and this may sound cliché, like, I like cliches because that
Mhm.
means that generally they're true, like, when people resonate with the same thing, but, like, at first, when I started doing it at, like, 16, 18, even in my early 20s when I got my first, like, true work as a worship leader, um I was really drawn to the production element, like, I wanted everything to be just
Yeah.
right, and the lights to look just right, and the PA to be just right, and, like, that's still instilled in me, like, that's still a very big part of this, like, I'm a
Yes, it
gearhead, I
is.
love talking. Yeah, you know this, right? Yeah, yeah, if you've ever seen me
Oh, I know.
Tucker's seen me yeah, yeah, Tucker's seen me in, like, the thick of it, and something's not working, and the world is falling apart to me. There's, like, spiritual growth that needs to happen in my own life because of that, but, like
There's a vein that pops out somewhere along your head and neck that just is like, "Oh, something's
yeah.
wrong."
Yeah, and honestly, dude, this is a sidebar, but that's why working with you, Tucker, is so great because the world could be crashing, nothing is working, and Tucker's like, "It's gonna be great, dude, like, everything's gonna be awesome."
That's gonna be great.
Yeah,
Could
I'm
go
like,
wrong.
"Bro, do you not hear, like, the PA is out of phase and, like, the subs aren't in alignment and there's, like, no 80 hertz in the room, like, what are you talking?" And Tucker's like, "No, it's gonna be fantastic," and it
My
is.
problem is I don't know what any of that means.
Yeah, yeah. So, like, early on, that was and to my own, like, embarrassment, that was like, if that stuff wasn't working right, I wasn't doing my job well and I wasn't leading worship well. And that's not true. None of that is true, but that's how I viewed it. Now at 35, oh God, right? But now at 35, I start looking for the wins and I also start looking for the expectations on a much deeper level. And so like let me just
Mhm.
like here's one of my favorite stories to tell
Yeah.
with this. My last church I was at, there was a couple. It was a very blended church as far as age demographic goes, right? There was this lovely couple at the church. His name was Larry. His wife's name was Joyce. And he came up to me one Sunday after I was leading worship and he said, "Hey, Chris, I love your worship leading. I do have a question. Like, there's times in worship where I see you doing this, and I've seen people, raising your hands. I've seen people do that before.
Mm.
I don't know what that means. I don't know what that's about, right?" And so I just like pulled out scripture for him. I says, "Hey, actually, scripture commands us that when we worship, that it's God's desire that we lift up hands, that men would lift up hands
Mm.
when they pray, right? And that's just an act of surrender. It's an act of getting out of my own comfort zone. Like there's deep theological things we can go into this for that." And he just looks at me, he goes, "You know what? I don't get that. It may even feel a little weird, but thanks for sharing that with me," right? That was the end of the conversation
Mm.
until the next Sunday, right? I look out and there is Larry and Joyce hand in hand doing this, right? That Sunday,
Mm.
musically, things weren't great, right? My own
Yeah.
personal life that Sunday, things weren't great. That moment right there, like, come on, right? Like, we're
Yeah.
we're we're engaging people where they're at. The Lord is moving and working in their lives, even pulling them out of their comfort zone, and they're connecting deeper with Him in times of corporate worship. So, like, that's now at 35 my
Mhm.
biggest driving factor. It's not whether my guitar sounds perfect or my vocals have the
Yeah.
right amount of compression on it. Am I engaging people where they're at?
Mhm.
And through that is the Lord pulling them out of their comfort zone. So that's man, that's my driving factor nowadays. Let it
Yeah.
stay there, Lord, right? Like, let's not
Yeah.
go back.
Right. I love that win. I love that picture, of just like, as a worship leader, there's almost like a mythos around the worship leader, right? Sometimes of like what they actually do and what they're actually responsible for. Like some people are
Why
like,
are
all
you
right, their
here?
job is to sing the right songs with the right notes, right? Other people are like, yeah, they're this like spiritual guru that's allowing the presence of God to invade a room. And you're like, all right, I'm not sure it's maybe all those things or none of those things. So sometimes just seeing a little bit behind the scenes of like, what is it that we're actually trying to do, which is to lead people to a place, right, of surrendering, of giving God glory. And it's amazing that God uses music, right, to
Yeah.
do that. Like he could have done anything, right? He could have just said all worship is going to be you coming into a room and you sitting there and just humming one note and thinking about me. Like that could have been it. It could have been this very like more like Buddhist meditative type thing. But God gave us music and creativity as a means of worshiping him and of corporately worshiping him. It's uh
Yeah.
it's amazing when I think about, and I know I'm going off on a tangent here, but I just get excited about this stuff.
Yeah.
When I think about the idea of collective corporate singing as an act of worship, I see that as like in and of itself almost being an evidence for God and who he is because I'm like you're not like birds sing, right? But they're not singing in harmony together
Yeah.
and declaring like that, nature declares the glory of God, that idea,
Yep.
but they're not like verbalizing who God is and declaring who is God gave us this incredibly spiritual and powerful and creative and artistic means by which we give him glory. And that's how he receives it, right? So we read in Psalms and he's like, I want you to be loud. Like I want the harp, I want the clangs, I want the cymbals, I want all that stuff because it brings him joy and it brings him glory. It's just amazing just to think about. And I'm always blown away by it because I'm not musical. You know what I mean? Like I'm a painter, I'm a visual
Yeah.
guy. I can't do music. So whenever I see people like you who can, I'm like, wow, it's like magic to me. Like there's science behind it, there's technique behind it, there's methodology, but to me it's just magic. I'm like it's the same thing with planes. I don't know how they work, but they're just magic to me.
Yeah.
Um
Yeah. Well, the earth is flat, so there's that, but I'm just kidding.
yeah,
I'm
we'll get
kidding.
some comments for you there. There you
Yeah.
go. So kind of bringing it back on track. So you had a band called Freedom Calls. That's how we met. And then now you've transitioned to Chris Barnes Music. So I'd love for you to share a little bit about why that transition occurred and some of the process behind that and your own thinking and your own heart behind that. Because sometimes people look at things and they're like, oh, he went from Freedom Calls the band to like Chris Barnes. What a narcissist. And I know like that's
Yeah.
not your heart, right? That's not the reasoning behind it. So I just love to hear a little bit of the background on that transition and that story.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I've been accused of worse, and some of it's been true, but yeah. So very, very briefly, we started Freedom Calls when my wife and I were still dating, right? So we've been
Oh wow.
married for 11 years. I think Freedom Calls was started when I was like 21 or 22. And really what it was at its inception was local churches would call me up. I was working at a local church as a worship leader, young guy, and they say, "Hey, we have this
Mhm.
event, will you come and lead worship at it?" And I didn't have a team to do that, right? I was pulling musicians from, my local worship band. I said, "What if I just got together area musicians from different churches and built this like worship team that could go and do these things?" And that was it, right? That was just small,
Mhm.
small thing. And over the course of 11 years, it blew up, not blew up, but it got bigger and bigger and bigger and more, at one point we were traveling with 5 band members and 3 crew members and a big
Mhm.
trailer and like big production. We were opening for Crowder and Building 429 and Colton Dixon and all this type of stuff. And man, like such a great run, awesome times, but like life changes in the course
Oh yeah.
of 11 years. Like all of our lives radically, radically changed during that time. And we went through lineup changes and vision changes and everything like that. And at the 11-year mark into it, I just kind of stepped back and took stock and was like, "Hey, like this has run its course and it's been very, very like far more successful than I expected it to be." But like I have this kind of desire in my heart to go a new direction and less just the I wanna be careful when I say this, less just the camp worship leader and more
Yep.
writing songs for the church,
Yep.
and doing original stuff, and that's something we had never really done as Freedom Calls. We
Mhm.
dabbled in it a little bit, but, like, never took the time to actually push that as a main focus, and so just, at that point, I just said, "Hey, I'm gonna start doing something new," and I started Chris Barnes Music and really dove into, like, the singer-songwriter aspect of this, and so just went that route. I have a new single out with that called Heart of the Father. You can check it out on all
Mhm.
streaming platforms. Have a whole list of songs that I'm demoing and working on right now, and so that was kind of the transition process. The good news of that is a lot of the stuff, at least in theory, kind of looks the same. And so I'm still leading
Yeah.
worship at a lot of events and camps and conferences. We just did a worship night a couple nights ago. Tucker may talk about that at a certain point, but but what I get to do now is kind of do the whole singer songwriter thing, which is new for me. I very much enjoy it.
So, before I do want to talk about worship night, but before we get to that, I'd love to hear about your songwriting kind of process, if there is a process or if it's just random. But also just like, because that's the creative process, right? Like we just want to know about the creative process because that is a big transition, right? From just you know, for lack of a better word, doing covers of our
Yeah,
modern worship sets to doing original work, which requires a lot of vulnerability. It's a bigger ask because like when you go to do these events, right, you're doing like the most recent Brandon Lake song or Phil Wickham or whatever, and they're like, also here's this song that I wrote, and there's a lot of vulnerability with that.
dude. Oh man.
So I'd love to hear about the behind the scenes of Chris Barnes in the new, iteration, the new season of songwriting.
Yeah, yeah. Boy, I mean, you know what? You hit the nail on the head on like the scary
Mhm.
factor of putting your song up against like Brandon Lake or Phil Wickham, right? And so like there
Not
it's
your
one thing.
production, just your song.
Dude, I mean, it's one thing going from I Know a Name, like, which is like,
Yeah.
boisterous, magical, beefy song to, one of my songs, Praise the Lord. I'm like, "Oh, boy, you really aren't that good at this," you know? Now, in fairness, Brandon and Phil have 20 people in a room working on the song, and
It's
I
true.
have me,
You
And so there's that. But one of my favorite quotes is by, I just blanked on his name. Who sings,
must not have been the favorite quote.
who sings Gravity? John Mayer. John Mayer. He says, "My inability to sound like my heroes is what makes me myself, right? And so, like, I when I first dabbled in this idea of songwriting, I started, like, watching all these tutorials on how to be a songwriter, and there's this on YouTube, there's this 5-part method, and, "Oh, no, you do this, or you do that, or here's" you get a whiteboard out, and you draw a circle, and then circles around the circles, and these are ideas that connect back to the main concept, and I tried every single one of these, and I wrote ridiculously bad songs, just like, what like, just stuff that I look at, and even here was the litmus test, right? I'd show them to my wife or to my friends who were, like, in my corner, in my favor, and
Yep.
they'd be like, "I don't know," or,
Not this one.
"No, yeah," I'd send them to Tucker, and he'd be like, "I think you got something better, buddy," and,
Try again. Give it a whirl.
bro, yeah, yeah, and so, I was like, "Well, hey, maybe I'm just not meant to be a songwriter. Maybe this isn't working for me," but what I started doing is, instead of being intentional and sitting down and trying to come up with a song, is I would just be out about, like, at Walmart, or I'd be in times of prayer or the word, and an idea, a lyric, a hook, a concept would hit me, and I'd pull up my phone,
Mhm.
and I'd either do a voice recording note, or I'd just write down the text
Okay.
in notes. And, like, I'm using my phone to stream right now, or I'd show you, but,
Mhm.
like, there is, I kid you not, hundreds and hundreds of voice notes and lyrics all written down on my phone, and they just
Wow.
compile together, right? And then eventually I'll come back into a
Mhm.
little studio like this, sit down with the guitar, and start working through. And the beauty of that is, sometimes you look at it and you go, "Oh, that was a terrible idea," like, there's nothing there. And then there's other times, where I'll come back and be like, "Yeah, yeah, there was something here. This works." But
Mm.
my personal boundary of this is, if I'm trying too hard on a song, I know one of two things. One, it's not there, or two, like, the Lord, this really wasn't the Lord's giving. This was some, bad idea. So, like, my current single, Heart of the
Mhm.
Father, right? Which I actually personally think is a halfway decent song. I'm not saying it's a great song, it's a halfway decent song.
Mhm.
I wrote that in, like, 20 minutes, right? And so
Mhm.
in 20 minutes, I had I mean, there's things that have changed in it as we've gone through the production process, but, like, in 20 minutes, I had the song done. When I sit on a song for 2
Yeah,
years, I
one
go, "Maybe I'm trying too hard." And so that's kinda how the
yeah.
process works. I'll say one more thing to this, and then because I talk too much when I get in front of a mic,
Mm.
but, I'll say one more thing to this. I'm big on this. Every song I write has to be, doctrinally sound, right? And that is a
Yeah.
big sticking point for me. In fact, I've actually thrown out songs where I'm like, "Oh, man, the hook is good and the lyrics are halfway decent," but, like, that's actually not how God describes himself in scripture, and I don't wanna do that. And this is not a reckless
Yeah.
love argument, and this is not a, Bethel, right? Like, I'm not going
Mhm.
down that road, but, like, I'm big on, I want to represent who God is
Mhm.
accurately based on how scripture says he is,
Mhm.
and so,
Yeah, I love that. It reminds me of, John Foreman where he's like, "Yeah, I made an album. I wrote about 100 songs, and, I used 7 of them."
yeah,
You know?
yeah,
Where sometimes it's people think the creative process is like, he sat down and he just wrote this, like, and it just came out. Sometimes it happens that way, but most of the time, it's like you don't see all the stuff that's in the trash bin in the corner of my office that I just
yep,
got rid of or chucked out. Like, you have no idea how many bad paintings I've done,
yeah,
like, before an event trying to figure out the details of how this is going to look. The creative process, it's messy in a lot of ways. There's a lot of things that get cut that don't make it to the final round, but that's what makes it good, right? It's the idea of, that when you're sculpting, right? You do a three-dimensional sculpture, you have to cut away all the stuff, like Michelangelo said, "I just removed everything that wasn't David," and left
yeah,
everything that was. So it's that same very, it's almost a visceral process that you have to go through when you're creating, but that's where the good stuff is. And I'm excited for, like you said, the new single that's out. We'll have links to all of Chris's, social media and also links to his Spotify and all the releases that he's sending out. So make sure you check that out when this podcast is over, or even right now below in the description. But yeah, I want to talk a little bit about, we just had an event together, worship night. I'll let you give a little bit of the details about it. But I was excited when you reached out to me, and a little bit behind the scenes for everybody listening about how sometimes these things work. So Chris reaches out
This
to
is gonna be
me.
good.
He's like, "Hey, we're having this worship night, and I can pay you $0." And I was like, "Yes, I'm in. Sounds great," because that's we do ministry together, and because of all of you guys who support us, I'm able to say yes to basically anything at this point. And Chris, you always get a yes. So anytime you need anything, just
Oh,
reach
you're
out.
kind, man. Vice
But
versa.
so we have it set up, and Chris is doing promo stuff for it, and then I get a booking request from a camp, and I was like, okay, and it's a paid event, so I'm like, all right, juggling this. So I call Chris up, and I'm like, hey man, I got this booking request. I might not be able to do worship night, and Chris, you were so gracious. You're like, oh yes, please go take that. Like we're
Yeah,
both in full time ministry. Like we understand, like sometimes you just got to make budget and things like that.
yeah.
And so I'm like, all right, so transitioning to do this camp now. And then the camp event just fell through. And so I was like, well, there's the confirmation that the Lord wants worship night to happen, us to do this together. So I text Chris, and he's like, I knew it was going to happen. I knew the whole
I
time
didn't even
you were
take you
never going
off
to
the
do that
rider.
camp event. You were going to yeah, I was there. He's like, I've still been promoting, we haven't even changed anything yet. So it's funny how God just brings those things together because it really was an amazing night. But
Yeah.
I'll let you kind of share what was the heart behind it and maybe some like conversations or stories that you saw from that night or some behind the scenes information for us just to take a peek behind the curtain of what these events are like.
Yeah, yeah, cool, man. So, like, let me just start here, and I'll try to expedite the story. But so we do not do many public events. That sounds awful, right? Like how pretentious of me. I don't do public events, right? But like
Only
when you
private ticketed events.
that's right. Yeah, yeah. Do you know who I am? But it's
Yeah.
true, right? Like I know a lot of area bands who are playing every, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday at whatever, this church or this pub or whatever. That's not us, right? Because, and there's a couple reasons for
Yeah.
that. Number one, because we don't just show up with, two speakers on sticks and a guitar. Like we have a very
Mhm.
large production. We have a crew who travel with us. We have band members who travel from out of state. Our drummer, my touring drummer, Andrew, great guy. Him and his wife are from New York. Another guy is from Williamsport. So it is a lot of work to get us all in the same room at the same time.
Yeah.
Because of that, we have to like weigh the cost balance of doing
Mhm.
events. And when only 30 people show up, 30 people are worth it, right? Like we love every single person, but like at a certain point you have to be pragmatic about this. And so, anyways, all that to say, we don't do a lot of public events. And I work with this Christian school a lot. I actually do IT for them. Great school. And we were getting ready as a group to head out on the road for now 8 weekends in a row of camps and conferences and that type of stuff. And I said, hey, we got to get in a room and like, we
Mhm.
haven't played together in like 6 months. We got to get in a room and at least work through some of these songs. I said, well, let's just do a band rehearsal but have people in the room when we do it, and that's kind of like in my head what I marketed it as a chance to get together and work through some of
Yeah.
these songs and get a good sound check. And so that was kind of the original intent. Reached out to the school and said, hey, can we do a worship night here? Bar, smallest room we have ever played in our life. So, like Tucker, you were there, right? I mean, probably at most like max capacity seated 250 people, right? And just this like it would have been crammed in the walls.
Mhm.
I think probably 150 showed up to the event.
That's fine.
I told you at the beginning of this podcast that I judge the success or failure of an event not based on the production and not based on even the head count anymore, but by the wins that are hard to quantify. So here's one of the wins from that night. There was a couple, but here's one of the major wins for me for that night. There was a 16-year-old kid. I won't tell you her name, but she opened the night as a singer-songwriter. First time doing something like
Mhm.
this, and I've known her.
Oh,
I'm
wow.
really good friends with her parents, and I've watched her like go from picking up a guitar from the first time. Actually, ironically, she started playing drums and then transitioned into guitar. So there's like,
Nice.
there's a little segue there.
There's a
Um,
camaraderie there.
that's right. Yeah, yeah, I get it. I get it, right? And so so I said, "Hey, will you sing a couple of your songs cuz she's been writing and recording songs as well. Will you sing a couple?" And she's like, "I'm so nervous to do it." And yeah, I don't know what I'm going to say in between songs. And so that for me, she got up there by the way and just killed it. Like she was
Mhm.
she should have headlined the night, right? It shouldn't have been you and I. It should have
Mhm.
been her. But like she just killed it, right? And for me at 35, looking back at me at 16 going, "Oh, I remember that moment." I wish there would have been somebody in my life at that time, like, pushing me forward, pushing me on stage, giving me opportunities. So for me, that was the biggest win of the night is seeing her have an opportunity to share and to do
Mm,
well in that. There was others, man, like, you did a great job presenting. I wanna be careful, I'll say this coded. I know there was a couple people in the room that night who have walked away from the Lord, walked away from the church, and then you get
mm,
up and you speak on the story of the prodigal son, Luke 15, right? And you actually said in that moment, like I'm
yeah,
on stage vamping behind you as you're just going for it, and you say, there may be some people in the room here tonight who have walked away. This is your time to take a step back, which is a common theme in these type of events. But I just looked
mm,
up and I saw these couple of people in the room, and I'm like, Tucker doesn't know this, right? He doesn't even know these people, but I do, and they're hearing this, right? And the invitation is there, and I don't know what happened with that, like, I don't, but, like, that was a win. Just being realistic from a technical standpoint, from a room size standpoint, and even from, like, a turnout standpoint, not the biggest wins we've ever had, even some might say, like, not worth doing,
mm,
but all the other things that night brought make it worthwhile, right? And so from the opening act to people in the room. Man, like, can I go off on a tangent here one just real quick?
please do.
So, yeah, so when I was, in youth group, I was probably 16 years old, and this church I was at had, I think, 3 services on a Sunday, but this one Sunday, they were only doing 2 for some reason, and somebody didn't get the message that they were only doing 2, and they showed up for the 3rd, right? And this was a guy who had walked
Mm,
away from the Lord and just happened to show up at church that Sunday for this 3rd service that wasn't gonna happen. And I watched as the
mm,
worship band got up there. They're hearing about this. The worship band and the pastor got up there and did an entire service for one person, which, by the way, was a little awkward, right? I was on the worship band that we, or that week. You're leading worship for somebody who's not engaging, right? They're just kind of sitting there
mm,
staring at you. Very, very awkward. The pastor's getting up there and preaching the exact same sermon for one person. And
mm.
that dude came back to the Lord that day, right? And so
Wow.
for all the stuff we look at and we go, oh, Hillsong has 50,000 people in a room, or Passion has, 80,000 people in Mercedes-Benz stadium. Man,
Mm,
it's the one sometimes, and it's worth
yeah.
putting in all the effort for the one sometimes. In fact, when I say sometimes, I mean most times. So
Mhm,
there was a little bit of that for me this past weekend at the
mm.
worship night. So yeah.
Yeah, for me, I always say ministry is never more than one person at a
Mm.
time, you know what I mean? Like, the goal of getting on the stage is to get off the stage,
Oh, come
right?
on.
And so for me getting up there, just been, just thinking about the lead up to it, I was really wrestling through exactly what I wanted to share. And sometimes God just gives me stuff kind of last minute, and that's kind of what happened that time. And I remember just like I wrapped up the painting, I wrapped up sharing what I was sharing, and I got off stage and I had this thought of like, who said that? Because those I don't even remember thinking of any of those sentences beforehand. It just kind of started just flowing out. And then talking to some people afterwards, people that are struggling in full time ministry, and just sharing
Mm,
with them about, God's faithfulness and how he is the God of all comfort, and that his yoke is easy, his burden is light, and that there is hope, there is light at the end of the tunnel for people. Yeah. And just seeing the response was really spectacular. And I think there's also just like the seeds that are planted, they won't go to waste. You know what I mean? And
yeah,
so even just the
yeah,
seeds of like getting in touch with the leader, the director of the school there, be like, hey, I'd love to come up and we'll do a chapel here. Don't worry about the money for it. Like, we'll do that. And then like that's an opportunity to connect with students. And you never know what can happen from there. And
yeah.
there's just these seeds that are planted that can lead to transformation and hope. And kudos to you for putting this together. I mean, the production, as far as I can always tell, is always, amazing. I don't know how any of it works, so I'm just, like I said, I'm blown away by
Neither
the
do I.
magic of it all. Yeah, right. You're like, it's electrons. It's all
That's right.
electrons just doing
Yeah,
different things. But it was really beautiful putting that together, not expecting anything from anyone other than just creating a space and environment for people to worship. And it's not the toughest environment we've ever been in for sure. But like, you know how it is. It's like you got people in rows, right? It's not like they're coming in for like the Hillsong worship night. We're not bashing on Hillsong. We're just saying like it's a different vibe, right?
yeah, yeah.
But I remember, like, after I finished the painting and as I was sharing, like, there was definitely, like, this kinda, like, shift in the room as people enter into, like, this like, what we're doing matters, like, this is significant, like, being in the presence of God is significant, and then you led into your single heart of the Father because I talked about Luke 15, so it tied in perfectly in there, was really, really powerful and just amazing to watch, and we've gotten to share a lot of those moments over the years together in ministry, but I don't know about you, I never get tired of it,
Yeah.
and I
Yeah.
never get tired of those conversations afterwards because it's these moments that are small little miracles, that are evidence for our faith, but also are just like gas in the tank.
Yeah.
It's amazing. Like when you see people come to Christ or just experience like transformation and hope, those are the greatest miracles. Like I think about Jesus, right? When there was the man that was lowered through the
Yep.
roof, right? Who was looking for healing
Tear the
and,
roof off, bro.
Jesus forgives his sins, and everyone's like, "Oh, this guy can forgive sin, blah, 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 blah," and they're mumbling and muttering, and Jesus is like, "What do you think is harder, to say to this man, 'Your sins are forgiven,' or take up your mat and walk? But so you
Yeah.
will believe that I have the
Yeah.
power and authority to forgive sins, take up your mat and walk," and the guy walks out. The great miracle that happened there, right, was the forgiveness of sins and redemption and transformation, not the physical healing, not the big wow, quote unquote production moment.
Yep.
It was
Come on.
the power of God to redeem a life. And that's what I love to see. That's what gets me fired up. I was talking to a friend recently who is a part of kind of just like this Pentecostal healing type group out in California, and they're seeing miraculous things happen, really, really cool things like healings and stuff like that. And I was like, yeah, I don't see that stuff when I'm like on the road doing things like, and he's like, you don't? Like, how do you not see this stuff? I'm like,
Mm.
dude, I get to see people come to Christ and experience
Yeah.
forgiveness of sins and radical transformation. Like, there is no greater miracle. The rest of it, I'm like, that's great. That's cool. Like, I'm not
Yep.
against any of that stuff, but it does not compare to this.
Let's
And
go.
like you and I in worship ministry and me with painting and preaching and evangelism, we get to see this stuff all the time. Like, we're seeing miracles every single week. You're about to go on an 8-week run, it's a lot. And you're going to put in a lot of straight up blood, sweat, and tears into the next 8 weekends at different camps and conferences and things. But when you get to the end of that run, you're like, dude, I'm empty, but I'm full.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
that's where I land all the time. Like, man, I am exhausted. I haven't slept. Like every time I go up on that stage, like I pour my like life out on that stage. But then I leave and I'm just so full because I hear these stories like the ones that you shared. I see what happens in people's lives and it's just amazing. And one of the best parts of what you and I get to do is that we do a lot of repeat events at the same locations.
Yeah.
Which for like a career isn't amazing, for ministry is awesome because you get
Dude.
to meet the same like kids or teens or adults like year after year and you get to see what God is doing in their life and see the growth. And like we're at a point right now, like you've been doing this for gosh, however many years, like 14, 15 years.
My
I've been
heart.
doing this for so next year will be a decade of painting freedom and the artist
Uh,
commission for us. And so like kids that like I've been ministering to when they were in, 5th grade, they're coming back on these
yes.
retreats as leaders now, you know?
Yes. Yes.
And seeing stuff like that happen is just amazing and remarkable. So yeah, I love it. I love doing ministry with you. I love seeing what God's doing through you. And I'm excited for the opportunities that are going to come from this and the songs that are going to come out of this. So real quick, as we kind of wrap up here,
Dude, can
could you
I
just
real
share
quick,
with
can I just jump in
everybody how
on
can
one?
they
Yeah,
yeah, please do.
dude, because that just jogged my memory on a story, is I got a
Yeah.
message on Instagram, 3 weeks ago from this dude, and
Mm,
we probably 4 years ago, maybe a little bit longer, we did this thing at a breakout session at a camp we were at where, it was, like, totally impromptu. We didn't plan any of it, but I think one of speakers or, like, one of their breakout sessions had canceled, and there was this open spot, and so I went to the leader of the camp. I said, "Hey, we don't have anything planned, but like we can do a Q&A for anybody who's in worship ministry. Like come talk to the band, get the hands on guitars, hands on drums. Like, do you want to know what we're using? Like, let's talk. And then like, let's talk about worship philosophy and all that type of stuff. We did this
mm,
honestly, once again, like not great turnout, but I just got a message like 3 weeks ago from one of the kids who showed up to that 4 or 5 years ago, and he says, "Hey, I just wanna let you know, I'm the worship leader at my church now." They just had this I'm like,
Oh,
he's
wow.
like 19 now, and they had this open position, and he says, "I remember when you guys did that. I remember seeing you guys lead worship. I remember talking to you. You were so cool, and now I'm the worship leader at my church." And so, like, full circle to what you were saying, where we get to invest not just an
Wow.
hour on one stop, we get to invest multiple hours at the same event year after year after year after
Mhm.
year. Boy, there's
Yeah.
opportunity for, and so for anybody watching who does this and like, I'm stuck in the same rut, I'm talking to the same people every single week, I'm doing the same thing
Mhm.
every single week. Don't discount what that impact is having in the long term, not in the man. Phil Wickham and Brandon Lake and Hillsong are great. They get 2 hours in a city every night, and that's it. You and I get
Mhm.
multiple weeks and months of impacting people for the long run, and there's value in that.
Yeah, and then I'll just share one last thought before we wrap up here. For anyone listening or watching, and this is I'm not putting anybody down. I'm saying this for just honesty's sake. Like Chris and I will both tell you, like we are both very like flawed individuals, and because we spend enough time together, we both know each other's flaws as individuals. But the beauty of it is that God uses flawed people who are open to what He's doing, right? So like Chris, you had an opportunity there to be like God opened a door and you had enough unction and faith to say, you know what, I'll step into this moment. And now, 4 or 5 years later, look at what has grown out of that seed that has been planted. So if you're listening or watching, just be encouraged. Like, you don't have to wait to be perfect. You don't have to wait to be a quote unquote professional or anything like that. You just have to be open to what God is doing and walk through doors that He is opening for you and just be
Yeah,
available to that. And when you do that, God does the most extraordinary things through the most ordinary of people. And
yeah,
I know I can speak for Chris and myself. We would both describe ourselves as very flawed, ordinary people who
yeah.
get to serve an extraordinary God. So, Chris, how can people follow you? How can they stay up to date on your ministry and what you're doing with Chris Barnes Music? Give us the rundown.
Yeah, I mean, we can do the basics, right? Facebook.com/Chris Barnes Official, or I'm sorry, Chris Barnes. I don't know what it is.
Mhm.
Just look up Chris Barnes Music, you'll find it. Instagram, Spotify, all the streaming platforms. Dude, can I just be like weird and be like, I don't care. I'm not good on socials. I don't care about self-promotion. I don't want to get any more notoriety or namesake than I already have. Like, instead of listening to my song on, yeah, like, dude, just instead of listening to my songs on Spotify, how about you open a Bible? Like, that's gonna if you like my songs, cool, thanks. I appreciate it. But I would so much rather you like pour into God's word or go fellowship with brothers and sisters. So I'm bad at self-promotion and I want to keep it that way. So yeah.
All right. Chris, one of my favorite things that Chris does, he has like a pre-written script whenever we're at events that he has to do if he has to promo himself, and he has to say it verbatim. Otherwise, he's like, just forget it. And he'll just like
Just yeah,
wander off the
yeah.
stage if he has to keep
Dude, it's
going
so
without that script.
awkward. Yeah. Like, you wanna see me, I will speak and preach and lead worship in front of thousands of people without breaking a sweat. You wanna see me lose my mind? Have me promo merch. Oh my gosh, yeah. Like, the band will actually look at me and go, "What is
I'm
happening
I'm
right
so
now?"
glad that I just got to put you on the spot. So I will do the promo for Chris. He's his brain is breaking. So guys, you can follow Chris on Facebook, Instagram, Spotify, wherever Chris Barnes Music or Chris Barnes Official Music, whatever it is on those different
Whatever it
platforms.
is.
God is doing great work in and through you, man. Like, be encouraged. I'm excited for the upcoming. We're going to do a lot of events together over the coming months, so it's going to be a great time. But thanks for coming on the pod, sacrificing some time today, man. We appreciate hearing your insights into just music and worship and songwriting and what worship ministry looks like behind the scenes, and really just letting us get a peek into your life and your ministry. And I'm sure it'll be an encouragement to people that are listening, and an inspiration for people that are, looking for what does God want to do in my life and how can He use me? And you've set a great example with your life. So appreciate you hopping on, and God bless you and all of your ventures, man.
Yeah, same to you, man. I'll see you out on the road in a couple weeks.